Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your Fulham podcast from Down Under. We are back again after a absurd game on the weekend. Fulham at 1.41 down, coming back to draw 3-3 with Sheffield United. Yes, that does make sense. Here to talk it all through, we have David Crave. Good to see you back again, Dave, after a few weeks off.
Yeah, I've managed to put two in a row together. So yeah, that's a good omen, and hopefully I can continue being a bit more regular. But we'll see. Usually after a win, I tend to come on, so it feels a bit weird after a draw. I thought I was going to be that good luck charm for the podcast, but there's starting to be a few little slips in some of the away game performances. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it.
Yeah, I was going to say this one, it's hard to tell if it feels like a good result or a bad result, but we'll definitely touch on that as we discuss the game. And also joining us, as always, Sammy. How are we going, Sammy?
I'm going good. The last 5 podcasts I feel like I've done has been with Skibby and my dad, so I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm feeling fresh. This feels new again. And it's going to warrant. I don't know who I am anymore. So let's get into this weird hectic game. And yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Asking you how you are is always a dangerous question, and it comes right at the start of every podcast.
Do you know
that
what's
wasn't
funny?
too bad, Sammy. I'll take that as an answer.
I like premeditate sometimes what I'm going to say, and I forget every single time, and I just always give you the natural response. So it's just stream of consciousness.
That's what we want.
Here.
We just want natural. It's good.
Yeah.
Let's crack straight into it, guys. A nuts game. Let's be perfectly honest. This is one that beforehand we were talking about being a must-win, a game that Fulham should not even consider drawing or losing, and it didn't feel like that on the day. I think we dominated the first half, but in the second half it was absolute bedlam. Dave, your thoughts on just the game in general and how wrong we were, I guess, in our preview of this one.
Well, yeah. Obviously, going into the game, we all thought it was a game we should win. There was a few kind of nerves just on the back of some, particularly the Wolves game, I think, really. Another game we should have won. But just knowing that there is a bit of a vulnerability sometimes away from home, particularly if we don't get ourselves in front. Coming out of the game, it was. I'm with you. I don't know how to feel about it. It's. I feel like I should be disappointed, but I don't feel disappointed just because of the way the game panned out. And at one point when that fourth goal went in for Sheffield United, and I literally couldn't believe what I was looking at. It was almost a fall off the chair moment, a real what the fuck moment. Fortunately, that was ruled out. And when that happened, it was a bit of a turning point because I feel like, if we could, create a few more chances, there was more goals in the game. And fortunately, there was 2 more for us, and maybe the fourth one if there was a little bit more time. But I feel a bit. Maybe we had enough time with 14 minutes injury time. We probably should have put a bit more effort into trying to get that fourth. But I don't know. It was a whirlwind, and as I say, I kind of feel okay about it now. But it probably is 2 points dropped, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think so. And I it's an interesting one because you're right. It does feel like 2 points dropped, but at the same time, I think most people seem to have sort of let it go a little bit, and maybe that's because of our league position, the fact that we're so far ahead of the relegation zone now that these kind of slip ups don't really matter quite as much. And I also wonder, we'll talk about the goals themselves individually, but I wonder if the Muniz equaliser was a tap in at the back post, if we'd all be feeling quite as happy with the result. I think maybe because of the spectacular way Muniz actually put that ball in the back of the net, it does make it feel like, okay, we dropped points, but at least we've got that little flash memory that we're going to be able to go back to over and over again. That does make this feel okay. But Sammy, last season we were very, very good at putting away the teams outside, let's say, the top 8, top 9 sides in the Premier League. I think we we basically didn't lose a game against, or maybe only lost one game all season against the bottom half of the league. This season, there's a little bit of a turnaround where we are having these slip-ups against the bottom half of the league, but we are getting results against the top half of the league. Looking at results against Arsenal, Man U, would you? Well, which would you prefer? I guess. Are you happy with the sort of up and down roller coaster style season where we do have these slip ups, but we also get those high highs that have to come with those low lows, or would you rather just consistency?
Well, look, I mean, I think it does kind of. There is a bit of a weird natural progression now in the Premier League with like sides like Brentford come up and then have a very, very solid season and then go on a bit of a world beater run. This is our world beater season where we have longed for those historic wins that we can look back on in 10 years' time and say how amazing it was when we did it. It's a really hard one. I think I probably would prefer this type of a season because there is a smugness that comes with beating Man United and beating Spurs that I don't really want to give up. But in the grand scheme of things, ideally, you just want your team. And it's hard, isn't it? Because look, we're really crap away this season, but our home record is really, really good. So it feels good, but it also doesn't feel good. It's like continuously going out heavy drinking. It's like you're happy that you did it and you have a nice memory, but you just feel awful every weekend or most weekends, and it's just kind of like I'm not really sure what I want. But let's just discuss this game because there's this game is a weird kind of emotion for me because it was very, very euphoric at the end, and it really felt like we accomplished something, but we still end up drawing to Sheffield. So I'm a bit torn. I don't know what this podcast is going to be. Let's just see,
Well, first half it felt very Fulhamish, and it felt like this result was kind of coming. We had multiple opportunities, but just couldn't seem to break Sheffield down. And look, it's not the first time this season that we've struggled to break down defenses who set up quite deep and keep it quite tight. Muniz was completely marked out of the game in the first half. He had two men on him at all times and just didn't even get a sniff. Dave, do you see some issues there in the fact that we're really struggling to break teams down sometimes?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, that has been one of the issues away from home, where I felt that some of these games, particularly the last two away games, were on paper great opportunities to pick up points, but we've struggled in those first halves to create. But actually, in the Wolves game, we did create a couple of good chances and were wasteful. Whereas in this one, we weren't really able to break them down their low block, and that was a bit of an issue, really. And I think we need to try and find new ways of unlocking defenses away from home, because we all know once we get the first goal in games, we're usually good value for the win. But if teams away from home can get us to half time 0-0, we all start to worry. We've also got this really, really bad habit away from home is when we concede one, we immediately concede another. And that's happened a lot this season, and it's a real issue. Even in that, I think back to the Liverpool game in the Cup. We've obviously had that situation at Wolves. We've had the situation yesterday where that first goal goes in and we just kind of lose our heads and become all of a sudden really easy to play against. So that's a pattern that I think has become quite a problem for us. And we need to find a way of, if we do go down, regrouping and trying to keep it tight in order to kind of stay in games. So that's kind of how I feel about it. Bit disappointed that pattern has crept into our game on our travels.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think it seems to be a pattern, maybe not only away from home. It just seems to be a very Fulhamish thing to do, to concede one and then instantly concede another. You look at the timestamps for the goals here. and they scored 3 within a space of 12 minutes. Um, they score. Fortunately, we did hit back very quickly, which often I feel like we're not very good at. It often takes us a bit of time to get back into a game after we concede one. But then to concede in the 68th and 70th minute, and look, let's actually focus on the goals and talk about them themselves. First goal has to go down as a Tosin error here. He receives the ball from Leno. It's maybe a little bit of a hospital pass from Leno, but Tosin, rather than sort of controlling it and just playing the ball off, maybe a little bit of cockiness or just taking his foot off the pedal a little bit by trying to do something that he didn't really need to do. Kind of need to keep it simple as a defender sometimes, let's be honest. Tries to sort of pull the ball away and then slide a pass through, gives the ball away. It's a good finish from Brereton Diaz, but really shouldn't have put ourselves in that position in the first place. And I have to say, it looked like Bassi might have been trying to play Brereton Diaz offside because he doesn't really track the run. Also surprised that Robinson seemed to be outpaced by Brereton Diaz at the back post. It's just a moment where Fulham completely switched off, and unfortunately we got punished for it. And it kind of comes back to bite us in the arse because, Sammy, in the first half, we just weren't taking our chances.
Yeah, look, I think it could potentially also be the mark of having 2 players up front, because it's quite unusual in the Premier League to actually play against a 2 up front team. And so maybe you could put that down to poor preparation. I feel terrible that Dad isn't here to bag out Tosin, because that just feels like his perfect opportunity that he's probably been waiting for all
Trust
season.
me, I was sitting next to him when it happened, and there was a lot of bagging out Tosin for the next 60 odd minutes.
Okay, cool. So we don't need to go over it. Then you've been the world has been spared, and you've just copped. That's great. Look, I mean, I think they've actually worked it really, really well. I think is it McBurney?
McBurney.
McBurney? Yeah. McBurney and Brendan Diaz, I think they played really, really well together, and really, really support each other with some really, really solid 1-2s and cutbacks. And it's just not necessarily a style that we're particularly familiar with. I could probably put it down for that if I'm being really, really generous. But in any case, we shouldn't be letting that happen. And moreover, the quick succession that the same thing seemed to happen 2 more times, not cool. Not cool for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's an interesting one where I thought all of our defenders, which have been great for us really in recent times and really established themselves all as the kind of first choice defense. But they all played their part in that. I didn't think Castagna got close enough to stop the crosses that were coming into the box from that side. I think you're absolutely right about Tosin. Sometimes he's a bit too casual on the ball. He really put us on the back foot. But what's his name? Brereton Diaz. He seemed to find this little space in between, behind Bassi and ahead of Robinson a few times in the game, and obviously 2 goals came from that. That's really concerning that there was a gap there, that those guys weren't able to communicate and follow those runs and make sure that he wasn't on the end of them when the ball came in. But it's almost like all 4 of them really played their part in conceding that goal, which is a bit disappointing. I think perhaps as well, maybe that's a little bit harsh on Castagna, but he's played a lot of football. He played full 90 minutes in both of the international games as well. I know we're going to talk about Forest later, but perhaps he's feeling a little bit of fatigue and might be time for a rest. But you've also got Diop sitting there as well. He's not even in the squad, and he's probably looking at that position that Tosin's playing at the moment and think, I'm probably another mistake away now from getting an opportunity back in the side. So all of a sudden, the defence that's been so good for us in recent times, maybe there's now starting to be a few questions that people are asking, and I need to kind of get back to that form they were showing a few games back, or particularly in the home games, I think, to kind of secure their places for the foreseeable.
Do you think there's a bit of an aspect of, players do have bad games, and like you mentioned, the whole back four who have been so good this season seemed off. Castagna, that was probably his worst game of the season, and he's been keeping Tete out of the side. And I thought Tete actually came on and looked very good, but that was easily Castagna's worst game. Tosin makes quite a big error. Bassi probably could have done better on the first goal for sure, maybe the second goal as well. And Robinson just didn't have the impact we've seen him have for the majority of this season. Do you think maybe it was just one of those days where, unfortunately, all four of them had a bad game, and that's kind of why we slipped up the way we did?
I think it's always got to be difficult, and it's very, very hard to not get in your head when you're a significantly better side, because let's just call it what it is. When you're a significantly better side on paper and by reputation, and you're playing a relegation team and you can't really seem to break them down. I think if you get to 15 minutes into the second half and you haven't scored yet, the second that you're starting to get a lot more pressure on you, I think mistakes do kind of come, unless you're extremely steely and have experience basically dripping from you. Like Tosin and Bassi are still quite young. Castagna's not. And Robinson's still pretty young as well. It's hard. I mean, I want to make allowances, and I could probably just put this down to just one of those games, but I don't know. I don't want to kind of get too attached to that, because I think it just sets a bit of a bad precedent. I think in Silva's credit, though, I think he really addressed some problems really, really quickly, and actually did a really good job at reshaping the team in a very short amount of time. But I don't necessarily think it was entirely the defense. I think it should have been through our midfield and our front line that we should have at least got something to at least allow the defense to be a bit more confident. Is that fair?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, you need the attackers to actually put the ball in the back of the net and take a bit of pressure off the defenders. But the defenders have one job, which is to keep the opposition from scoring goals. And unfortunately, we look at the first goal. It's an error by Tosin. The second goal, the defense completely switches off. It's a quick free kick taken by Sheffield. They slip the ball through. I don't know if it's a pre-planned, free kick routine that they've got, but McBurney was sort of floating in the middle of the box, completely unmarked. Brereton Diaz is the quickest to react and makes a little run in behind, quite easily squares the ball across for McBurney, who puts the ball in the back of the net. Again, I'd call it a defensive error. It's the defense switching off when they should be completely switched on in that moment. Maybe in part, Bernd Leno should potentially take a little bit of blame. As a goalkeeper, your job is to organize a defense in a situation like that and make sure that everyone is switched on and ready to go. I wouldn't attribute all the blame to him, because it's not his job to actually follow the runners and make tackles. But look, I feel like the only decent goal Sheffield scored, not to take away from them at all, they did score 3 against us, but the only good goal was their third goal, which is, again, winning the ball in midfield, counter-attack, a good cross from Hamer, who puts it into Brereton Diaz at the back post. Bit of niggle in the net afterwards, which I quite enjoyed. I'm not sure exactly what they were checking there. Leno grabbed hold of Brereton Diaz. Looks like McBurney chucks a forearm at Leno as well. It got a bit messy in there, but nothing came of it. A question around Brereton Diaz, who had a really good game in Fantasy Premier League. He was the top scorer for the Premier League for the week as well, with 2 goals and assist. Would you take him? He's currently on loan from Villarreal at Sheffield. He's someone who we looked at previously. He's only 24. He plays primarily on the left wing and can step in as a backup striker as well. Is this a kind of player that we should actually be looking at? He's proven he can do it in the Premier League now. He's been at Sheffield for 5 games. He scored 4 goals and got an assist. His market value is probably somewhere around 15 to 20 million. Do you think that's a kind of signing that we could potentially be looking at in the summer?
I think that's a pretty good shout, really. I think, it's quite likely that our squad going into the start of next season will feature three strikers, but it's easier to keep three strikers happy and motivated if one of them, is of the like of Brereton Diaz, who can play wide as well. So it means you can kind of rotate the two main strikers depending on form. But if there's injuries, he can step in. Otherwise, he can play wide if we need him to. And I think it's a pretty good shout. He'd be that would be quite a good price to pick him up at. He's a decent age. I think the question mark on him before was, could he do it in the Premier League? And he's now starting to show that he can in a struggling side. So I think it's actually a pretty good shout, and certainly someone I think we should look at if you're right about that price. And I'd be quite interested to see how that plays out.
He's clearly talented. I just think he just kind of came across as a bit of a dick to me, to be perfectly honest. And I'm trying to put like dickhead Fulham strikers behind me. That's why I really like Muniz, because Muniz is just seems like a very, very lovely man, and I kind of want to keep that trend going. But if we're judging him just purely on capability, he's a very good striker, and I think that would actually be a pretty decent move. It would make total sense. But as long as he's playing for Sheffield, I'm not the biggest fan of the guy.
Talking about dickhead players, who didn't love Stefan Johansson during his time at Fulham?
Yeah.
Who didn't love Mitro during those times when he used to wind up defenders and get in people's face? The dickhead players are great when they're on your team. They're really shit when they're on the opposition team. Look at someone like McGinn at Villa. I absolutely hate the bloke, but I can imagine Villa fans love the guy because he winds people up and changes games. And I don't actually think Brereton Diaz is that much of a dick. I think he got in Leno's face a few times, and he's a good at time waster as well. We were linked with him in the 22-23 season transfer window. We almost signed him apparently, but he made another decision, obviously, to not come to Fulham. I would love to have someone like him, especially Willian will be 36 going into next season. The idea of having a 24-year-old sitting behind Willian to learn from Willian and potentially be a backup striker as well, it does feel like the kind of player that I'd want. But, if he keeps doing this for Sheffield, there's going to be a lot of other clubs sniffing around him who might be able to offer European football at the end of the season as well. Let's talk about the Fulham goals. First one has to be one of the easiest goals Palhinha is ever going to score. He runs to the near post. He actually times his run terribly, but no Sheffield United player follows him. He stands all by himself on the corner of the 6-yard box for about 2 seconds before the ball gets to him. And then all he has to do is put the header on target, and it's unsavable. Dave, at that point, you was sitting next to Dad. We go 1-1, 62 minutes gone. We sort of turned to each other and said, geez, Sheffield are really bad. How are we in this position at the moment? Because that is like basic stuff. Mark your man, especially someone like Palhinha, who is so good with his head. Did it feel like when we scored 4 minutes after they put in their first goal that maybe that was the little oomph that we needed to actually win the game?
Oh, yeah, most certainly. Most certainly. And as you say, it was such an easy goal. Terrible defending. But having said that, we're a bit unlucky, weren't we, before that? Muniz's header that hit the post. I mean, that was millimetres away from dropping, in the other side of the post.
Header as well, that was.
Fantastic header. So there was clearly goals to be had against that defence. And when that one went in, I thought, oh, right, I could only see one team winning it from that point. Very quickly that all changed again. But you're right, it was a very good header. That's, to be fair to Palhinha, very good header to find that far corner. But yeah, too easy. He should have been picked up. But it just it should have given us confidence to push on and get that second. But fortunately, as we've already mentioned, the defense weren't quite switched on, and we were struggling up the other end, which obviously led to a little bit of a capitulation after that.
I
So
also
yeah,
think it's worth noting, and again, it comes from a fan perspective, because it's like, I really like Sasha Lukic. I've been saying it all season. I've really been in this corner. Oh, he was so wasteful this game. It really, really felt so wasteful to me. He missed a really, really solid opportunity that I feel like somebody with a little bit more kill instinct would probably put away quite easily. As I felt for like large portions of the game, he just went completely missing. The second that he actually came off and was replaced with Traore, weird move, but the second he came off, it just completely changed, and it actually felt like there was some attacking options that were actually getting streamlined through a lot better. See, I do think that hindered us quite a lot. He was basically nowhere for the first half, and then yeah, in the second half, it wasn't enough. And then lovely TC and BDR came on, and yeah, and then we were back. Then we were fully back.
I'll dispute it a little bit that Traore coming on changed the game, because I actually think the period between when Traore came on and when Kearney came on, we actually conceded the 2 goals. We were having a Wobie play central midfield, which wasn't working. And it was actually, I think, the moment when Kearney came on, he came on for a Wobie, and Kearney all of a sudden did what Kenny does and just controlled the game, slowed everything down, and sat deep and was able to actually pull the strings a bit. I think in that little 10-minute period where we didn't really have someone sitting deep to do that, because that's not a Wobie's game. He can probably hold his own in that position, but isn't going to offer the same thing. But yeah, I agree. Traore coming on made a big difference once Kenny was there to actually pull the strings. And then, the other changes of Jimenez, Decordova-Reid, and Tete coming on also made a massive difference. Castagna, like I said before, I think he had a pretty poor game. Tosin, I think, again, probably got pulled off because Bassey's a little bit more dynamic and can flood forward if needed. And obviously coming off for an attacking option in Jimenez, and Decordova-Reid coming on as well. Let's talk about the Bobby goal, because he's someone who is such a good finisher, and I think we're often umming and ahhing about what to do with Bobby Decordova-Reid. Do you keep him on and extend his contract? Is his time up because he's kind of a utility player and maybe a luxury item when you're trying to strengthen a squad and take the next step? But he really did prove what he adds to this team by coming on and literally with his first touch puts a bullet into the bottom corner. And it just made me sit up and think, why haven't we been shooting not from distance, but why haven't we just got more shots on goal, on target at least, throughout the whole game? Because it's obvious that we have the ability to score in the players that we've got, but we were almost trying to only score tap-ins or headers from 6 yards out. We just needed that little burst of a fresh player coming on. Dave, I'll throw to you. How good was Bobby coming off the bench, and Tom Kearney assisting the goal as well?
I thought Kearney, when he came on, he was absolutely excellent. He really controlled the game from the second he walked on the pitch, and he was obviously instrumental in setting up that second goal. But you're right, it was a fantastic finish, and Bobby's got that in his locker. And he's had limited appearances this year. He's been in and out of the team, but he's still contributed with goals and assists when he's been called upon. He's so reliable. He's been a fantastic player for Fulham. Of course, I think we said it when we were reviewing the squad, everyone would like Bobby to stay. But it's just whether the club can, and him can agree terms and give him what he needs to feel valued in the squad, and on a contract that's a suitable length that works for all parties. And I think that's probably what they're trying to iron out at the moment. But the subs were great when they came on. Just go back a step, actually, just based on what Sam was saying about Sasa Lukic. And it just got me thinking, because there was a few kind of below par performances from players that, was a little bit of a surprise. We mentioned Stanier, we've mentioned Lukic. Iwobi, I thought was a little bit under par.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bit off the pace. And, I just wonder, all these players were away on international duty, weren't they, before this game?
Correct.
And perhaps maybe we were seeing some fatigue there. You could talk about Robinson as well, not being his usual self. Calvin Bassey obviously got sent home injured. So all of these players that have been so good for us, perhaps were feeling a bit of fatigue from that break.
Late season jaded.
Yeah. I wonder if
Mm.
there's something in that. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I watched the Nation League final or whatever, the US Mexico game, and Robinson put in a shift. Like he looked knackered in about the 50th minute. He was just being harassed all game long, and he was doing hot laps up and down the wing all game. So I agree. And then on top of that, you're playing at a weird time of day. I think it was like 2 a.m. kickoff UK time or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
And he's had to catch international flights across the Atlantic, so it definitely would have an effect on them for sure. And yeah, maybe you're right, because like you say, it's Robertson, Castagna, Iwobi, Lukic, all the guys who travelled for international duty, and everyone else actually kind of had an okay game. I mean, Polina, I thought had a pretty good game. He actually got sent home early from duty as well. So yeah, wondering if there's something in that for sure. Let's talk about the final goal, because this is the glory moment. And Dave, I can see your smile already. I might throw to you first. Just Muniz has been outstanding so far this season, but this half of the year at least. He now, with that goal on the weekend, he is the Premier League's top scorer in 2024, which is just a brilliant stat considering how we all probably thought of him at the start of the season. And what a goal to cap it off. This overhead scissor kick in the third or fourth minute of injury time to equalise after being effectively 4-1 down at one point. Just how good is this kid?
Well, I think he's clearly a very talented boy, but he's playing with such confidence. And I think that we already seen flashes of that earlier in the game, when in the first half he did really well to get a shot away off the post, didn't he? Using his strength to hold off defenders. And then for the rebound, he tried a Rabona, which would have been just as remarkable if that had gone in. So we're seeing a player with real confidence here. We've also more than once for Fulham in his time here. I think it was just only a matter of time before he made good contact with one of them and it flew in the net. And thank God he got it at a really optimum time to, rescue a phenomenal goal. He's it's very acrobatic, athletic, and he's made such great contact with the cross, and it's just wonderful to see a player with that much form in such great form. And also, if we look back at the goals he scored for us so far in this run, a lot of them have been kind of poachers finishes, haven't they? Like inside the 6-yard box. This is the first one where, I think that sort of, that makes you kind of take note of what a talent this guy is and what he's got in his locker. He's not just a poacher and a finisher. He's also able to pull off a scissor kick in the 90-odd minute. So yeah.
The thing that I really love about his goal as well is it's one of those goals that, because he's so young and he's so fresh, Sheffield would just have no idea that he was going to pull that out. Yeah, they would just have no prior. They would know he's in really good form, but they would not think that was part of his arsenal. They would not think that would be something that they would potentially need to be concerned about, and that just makes it so much sweeter. It's such a lovely narrative, because he's just had such a difficult run, and he's really proving good now. And I just love him. He's just a lovely guy, isn't he? He's just a sweet Brazilian boy.
I'm also glad he's got a decent chant behind his name now. It was always a tough one. I was trying to think of something, but couldn't get it together. And there's a few videos floating around on Twitter. If you haven't seen them, definitely check that out. Look, Muniz, he's signed for Fulham in 2021. His contract expires at the end of 2026. The club have a 1-year option on that as well, but we've seen it quite often when players hit a good run of form, they do get a new contract offered to them. And when he signed for Fulham 3 years ago, as a 19-year-old, he probably wasn't on very much. I can't imagine he's on a very high-paying contract at the moment. Do we expect to see a new contract for Muniz before summer, especially knowing that with the form he's in at the moment, there's surely going to be a few people sniffing around in the summer?
Most definitely. I think the club should most certainly be looking at offering him a new contract purely just because of the wage disparity I think he will be on against the rest of the first team players. And it would just be a good sign of commitment, really, for the next season and the seasons ahead if we can tie him down beyond the current contract length. It will also make sure developed in him we're able to get maximum value. So yeah, if they're not doing that now, there's a problem. So I'd hope behind the scenes they're starting to put that together.
I'd be shocked if they weren't already. I was going to say something. What was I going to say? No, just because it's a purely financial thing. Just because he might get offers from a couple of clubs, but realistically, he would probably be going there to be on rotation. He's our out-and-out starting striker now. He scored like however many on the trot. I can't quote, but he would want to stay here. He would want to stay here, and we've actually given him enough in terms of time as well. He's been with us 3 years, gone on loan, had to work through a couple of injuries, and we stood by him the whole time. I mean, he doesn't seem like the type of guy that would just move the second Liverpool come sniffing around. I could be completely wrong, obviously, but it doesn't seem like that would be the case. And why would he to play under Muniz, for example? I just can't see it. I just can't see it.
Yeah, just on that, there was I did notice on Twitter X this morning that there was a few links going around that Chelsea were planning on offering us Broja in an exchange for Muniz, but I'm pretty sure it was an April Fool's. I'm pretty sure it was an April Fool's, and we shouldn't be falling for that one.
Got to check the date on that before reading Twitter this morning. It was a nightmare to try and navigate Twitter today. It was a shocker, but I think we just have to lock him down to a new contract. He's obviously making waves with his performances, as Carl on the live stream mentioned. He's the second top scorer in all of Europe, alongside Harry Kane.
Wow.
In 2024, which is kind of nuts. I think Jonathan David might be the only person who scored more.
Right.
And I can't see us not putting a new contract in front of him, especially if what's to believe that he's on about £20,000 a week. I'd say we'd be looking at doubling that. And I think the faith that Fulham have shown in him and that Silva's shown in him over the last 3 years, when there were moments when we easily could have basically shipped him off back to Brazil and just said, look, you work really hard, but it's just not working out. Thank you for your time, basically. To actually hold on to this bloke and go, no, this guy is a talent. We know it. We need to back him and keep trying because it will come off eventually. And when it does come off, you do, at least most people would have a bit more of a connection, I guess, with the club for doing that for them. And I think you can see that with Muniz, his celebration. He's gone from dancing a shimmy to standing there and pointing at the badge now. And I saw someone tweet and just say his mentality is so top rate at the moment. He scored probably the best goal of his career on the weekend. And rather than going off to the fans to celebrate an equaliser, he runs to the net, grabs the ball and sprints back to the halfway line after putting in a massive shift for 93 minutes or about 100 minutes at that point if he'd taken stoppage time in the first half. It's just this is the kind of guy who you want to build a team around, and it feels like a second coming of Mitro, but potentially the ceiling is even higher with Muniz, with the ability to learn and that sort of want to learn that you can see from him. Mitro obviously had a lot of natural talent, but it was just natural talent, and he just did what he did because that's what he does. With Muniz, you can see he's constantly feels like he's sucking up as much as he can from all the players around him, and the guys seem to love him. He's got a great Brazilian connection with Pereira, with Willian there. It just feels like the kind of player who I'm just excited about. I don't know the last time we had someone like this who you felt was going to stay, because someone like Sessegnon, you always felt Tottenham was sniffing around since he was like 16. Harvey Elliott, you barely got a sniff, but Muniz feels like that kind of almost, I won't say generational player, but in terms of Fulham fans, you sort of link players with a period of time, and Muniz feels like that player through from like maybe now till 2030. This is the Muniz era. It's kind of what I want to see, is that we actually do everything we can to keep hold of him from here.
I also think it could just literally be as simple as giving him the number 9 shirt, as Black, White, and Fred said. Because I remember when he first joined, there was an article about how he wasn't allowed to have 99 on his back just because he wanted 9 so badly. So it could just be as simple as just giving him 9, and that just gets rid of Broja, and then that's fine. I'm totally fine with that. It could just be that simple.
I think we can all agree that Broja is probably not going to be hanging around next season, considering he can't even make the bench at the moment. It's kind of looking like a weird signing now that I mean, obviously we didn't expect this to happen, Muniz to become this star striker, but this Broja signing, the fact that he's not even making the bench, does feel a little bit strange. And I've seen a few conspiracy theories that say we've taken Broja to not play him, and we're paying 4 million to drive his market value down before the end of the season when Chelsea have to sell him. He's gone from being a player who probably demands 30 million down to a player who hasn't played a game for 6 months, which I quite like that conspiracy theory, but I don't think it's true. Let's be honest. Let's wrap this game, guys, and I'll ask each of you. Dave, I'll start with you.
Yeah.
We sort of touched on it at the very start, but how do you kind of feel after this game? Is it a point? It's obviously points lost, but are we feeling positive going into the Forest game? Are we feeling like there's too many errors? How are you feeling?
Yeah, no, I'm really confused, if I'm completely honest with you. I've got no idea how I feel about that last game. I enjoyed elements of it, but disappointed with, clearly the manner of the goals that we conceded. Just before we move on from it as well, that 4th goal that was disallowed from them, if that had been allowed, if there wasn't an offside in there, that would have been one of the worst goals we've conceded this season.
By far.
Absolute mess at the back there. And I think it was actually tossing at the end where the ball dropped him on the 6-yard box and he just passed it back to McBurney to slot it in. I just thought, what on earth are you doing? Fortunately, we got out of jail, and but yeah, it was a weird one. I think coming back from 3-1 down, when at one point I thought we were going to lose 4-1, you have to take something from that and feel good about it. But that ultimately you look back on it now, and it's another game away from home where we've missed the opportunity to capitalize on, against a poor side. So going into the Forest game, I mean, it's going to be tough, isn't it? We can't be. They've got a more potent attack, I think, than Sheffield United. I think they've got some really dangerous players in the attack at Forest. Morgan Gibbs-White, you've got Alanga. We talked Hudson-Odoi. You've got some good players. You've got Chris Wood banging them in for them. So they've got some dangerous players up front. And if we defend like that, like we did there, and capitulate like we did there, this could be a difficult game for us. But on the flip side of that, I don't think we'll see 2 performances as bad as that from the back line. And we've got a pretty good record at Forest. We won there last season. I just think the first goal is going to be massive. If we can get ourselves in front in this game, I think they're really fighting down. They're struggling down there, and they need points. And I think a goal against early would really hit their confidence and make the fans really edgy. So I think first goal massive going into the game at the weekend, and I'm sure we'll discuss if any changes should be made to the 11 to help us pick up some points.
I kind of refuse to be happy about it. I'm happy about Muniz goal, and I'll probably leave it there. The only thing that I actually really, really want is just, and I'm kind of glad that it's 2 away games in a row. Because we can kind of safely say now that this is a definitive problem, our away record. And I hope that we really take Nottingham Forest as an opportunity to really, really iron out what those issues actually are, because that needs to be addressed. And I'd rather do it against Nottingham Forest than City, for example.
Yeah, no, I agree. Fortunately, we don't have to play City away. But yeah, I agree. It's confusing. I don't know how to feel after that. There was elation with the way that we came back and the goals that we scored, because Decade-Over-Reed and Muniz's goals were both great goals. It felt like we should have taken something in the first half. We had so many opportunities in the second half as well. If we have a quick look at the stats, Fulham had 74% possession for the game, 24 shots on goal with 9 on target. Sheffield United had 4 shots on target, 3 of which they scored. Sheffield United 215 passes compared to the 592 of Fulham. Fulham 15 corners, and we scored from 1 of them. Sheffield just the 2, and 13 fouls to 10. Look, it's a disappointing result, I think. But on to the next game, which is the Forest game. Obviously, Dave, you touched on a little bit there. Forest, doing okay this season, but they're probably lucky to be outside of the relegation zone purely because of the point deductions so far. How do we feel this one is lining up? Because this isn't a Forest team that I think we should be worried about, Dave.
Well, yes and no. I think that at home, notoriously they've been quite tough to beat. They've got some good wins over the last couple of seasons at home. The fans put on make it quite a hostile atmosphere, and we'll be cheering them on. And as I say, I think they've got players in the attack that can hurt most clubs in the Premier League. I think Morgan Gibbs-White's an absolutely fantastic player. I was really grateful that they dropped him for the game when we played them at home. It felt like a really strange decision at the time, but he's always a constant threat and can make things happen. Chris Wood's got 11 goals this season, so he's kind of come out of nowhere really, because he looked like last season he looked like he couldn't get a goal for love nor money, but he's stepped up a bit this year. In the other striker, can't recall his name, but he looked a bit of a handful, but he's been injured.
Awoniyi,
the Nigerian chap, Awoniyi, and Wood's come in and kind of got the goals they need. But yeah, I think they've got players that can hurt us. So I think that we need to defend well and start taking some of these chances. I mean, how often are we seeing, Fulham with 20 plus shots on goal away from home at the moment, and only, and we need to start putting them away and getting ourselves in front in these games, because I think that gives us a better chance of taking back some points.
Sammy, are you worried at all about the short turnaround? This is happening on Tuesday night. We played Saturday. Like we've said already, a few players looked maybe a little bit tired after international duty. Do you think, having only played a few days prior, it's going to be a bit of an issue for us?
I mean, frankly, I'm more worried about just lower ranking teams that see us as serious competition for them and an opportunity to get points, because realistically, that's what it is. And they'll be looking at us as a genuine opportunity for them. So I think there's more in it for them than for us, especially the closer they get to relegation. I'm always really fearful of that. Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it really just comes down to the way that Silva addresses the most recent problems. I know that isn't necessarily the best answer, but quite similarly to the Sheffield game, I think it's entirely about how we prep. I think as well our best starting lineup, because they were fatigued, it wasn't the best option, and we know that in hindsight. It could potentially be an opportunity for some decent rotation and maybe having Kearney back in the side and then having Lukic come back in the week following. Yeah, Silver's right. Whatever Silver decides, I think he's usually right. But yeah, I just don't know. I do not know.
It's an interesting game, and look, Forest, their home form has actually been not that great. Their last 10 games, they've only won 2 at home. The ones they have won, though, they've beaten Man United at home. I think they gave Arsenal a fairly good game at home as well. They lost to Liverpool, beat West Ham at home. But they do seem to slip up and they do concede goals. And I think that's where the opening is for us. If we have a quick look here at the form comparison for the last 10, Fulham have played 10, won 4, drawn 3, lost 3, picked up 15 points, the goal difference of +6. Forest in their last 10 games have won 1. They've drawn 3. They've basically picked up 6 points in the last 10 games. And have a -5 goal difference over that period, conceding 17 goals. On top of that, they also picked up their points deduction as well for PSR issues. And look, I think we talked about it with the Sheffield game, how Fulham sort of seemed like a bit of a final opportunity to actually pick up points to maybe move up the table. Do you think Forest might be in a similar position this weekend? This game against us looks like a game that they could potentially take some points from. They do have to play Spurs and then Wolves after that. Then they've got games against Man City, Chelsea before the end of the season. Do you feel like they're earmarking this game as the sort of time that they need to pick up 3 points?
Without a doubt, I think they'll be looking at this game as a game they need to win. I think even Nuno said that after the weekend's draw at Palace. He said that draw's okay as long as we result against Fulham on Tuesday. So, yeah, they'll be trying to win the game, and it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. You know, Sheffield United looked, in the first half they weren't too adventurous, were they, against us on Saturday? But Forest, you might try and take the game to us.
Yeah,
have opportunities are all in front, which I think is really important. I think Sam touched on it a minute ago when the starting lineup. I do think it's an opportunity to perhaps make some changes. There's a lot of players that have played a lot of games. We mentioned the international games before the Sheffield United game, where there was a few that Castagne, for example, played every minute for Belgium in those 2 games. Could be an opportunity, in my opinion, to maybe give Kenny a run out at right back. Perhaps it's a time to give Lukic a little bit of a rest and bring in Kearney, who looked excellent at the weekend. Willian as well. We've got to remember he's 35 years old, 3 games in a week. That seems a lot. Do we manage his legs? We know that. We've also got Adama, although my personal opinion is, having watched Adama a lot, obviously, over the years at various clubs, is he's more of an impact sub for me. I'd be really worried if he started just because of his defensive work. He could leave us a bit exposed down that side. If he's not switched on, I think I'd rather Wilson come in. But these all seem quite sensible changes Silva could put in to freshen up the squad and give some players a rest. So he's got an opportunity. It's not a winning side. He doesn't like to change a winning side. But we didn't win on Saturday, so there's another opportunity to mix things up, I think. And I'd be surprised if there wasn't 1 or 2 changes.
Sammy, what changes would you make for the weekend? not the weekend. Sorry, for a cold Tuesday night in Nottingham.
I think I would start Kenny. Just for a little bit of just je ne sais quoi. Why not? And I'd probably start Tete. I think those would probably be my only two. You could maybe have an argument for Wilson coming in, but I still like Iwobi there. And then absolute worst case scenario, we just rotate. I think I'd only make two changes. I wouldn't go too crazy, but knowing Sylvie's probably going to do in a completely different squad. Yeah, I can't get into the way that Portuguese boy thinks about things. It's my brain power is only so much.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised and wouldn't mind seeing Tete for Castagna. I think I'd like to see Kenny given a bit of a run again in the side. Maybe we realise that he's maybe a level above Castagna. If not, then that's fine. We can go back to Castagna. But I'd like to see Tete given a run. I think he'll stick with Lukic. One bad performance. I think it would be unfair to drop him after what was a run of very good performances. And I think you need to stick with your central partnership for a little bit longer. And I wouldn't be surprised if we did rest Willian with probably what you would consider more important games coming. I think you want Willian to be available and fresh for those games. And maybe it's Wilson starts on the left. Maybe Iwobi gets pushed to the left and Wilson starts on the right. Maybe even Bobby gets a bit of a run. Or Adama gets a run from the right. I don't mind Adama starting. I think he offers more as an impact sub, especially against a side like Forest. But maybe with Tete behind him, Tete would offer a little bit more cover defensively. So I think there'll be changes, but I agree, Sammy, not too many, but enough to just sort of spice things up a little bit here. Because I feel like after a result like that, you do need to make a few changes. I can't imagine Tosin will be dropped, even though he didn't have a very good game. But I think you have to make a change or two or maybe three, just to send a message to the squad that, guys, this isn't acceptable. And if we perform like this every week, you can't keep your spot. Simple as that. But really freshness more than anything, because let's be honest, they've done a good job for the whole season so far. A note on the timing for this game, obviously for those overseas, it's daylight savings has gone back in the UK, so it's a 7:30 kickoff in the UK. That's a 2:30 a.m. WA kickoff, a 5:30 a.m. Eastern States kickoff in Australia. For our US listeners, it's an 11:30 a.m. Kickoff for the Pacific time zone and a 2:30 p.m. kickoff for the Eastern time zone. An away game against Forest. It's going to be a tough game, I think. We have mentioned a few players that Forest have unavailable. Awonyi out, Ola Ina, ex-Fulham player, out. He's been on rotation as pretty much the entire Forest squad has throughout the season, but has played about 18 games. Awonyi the same. Willy Bolly, who's obviously an experienced Premier League player, and Tavares out as well. A few players, but as we were talking about pre-pod, Nottingham Forest have the biggest squad of all time and constantly recycling players. I have no idea what kind of impact this will actually have on Forest, because they do rotate so often that these four players could easily have been rested this week anyway. In terms of predictions for this game, Dave, I'll throw to you first and put you on the spot. Give us your prediction for the Forest game.
Right. So I don't feel overly confident about winning. I know that sounds horribly depressing, but I feel like, I feel this is a game we might pick up another point on the road, which will take us to 40 points. I think score draw is my appraisal. Having said that, if we can get the first goal, that would be huge. But I just have a feeling it's going to be a score draw. It'll be interesting. That takes us into a home game against Newcastle, whose form's been a bit up and down. would I take 4 points from the next two? I probably would, yeah. So it'll, over the next two games, if we can, a point tomorrow might to some feel like a bad result, but as I say, if we can back it up with a win against Newcastle on Saturday and take 4 points from the two games, then I think that would be a good return.
I'm going to say 2-0 because we should be winning this game 2-0. And because we should be winning this game 2-0, I am going to stick my neck out and make that my prediction. Whether that will be or not is highly speculative, but we should win this game 2-0. So I'm going to go with good faith.
I'm going to follow one of our live stream attendees. Colin Bolger has gone with a 3-1 victory to Fulham, and I actually kind of backed that. Looking at Forest, I mean, they've won one game in 2024. It would be very Fulhamish for us to be the second game that they win in 2024, but they're in terrible form at the moment. They've not won in their last 5. They can't score more than one goal at the moment. They leak goals as well. I just feel like this is a bounce back for Fulham as well, where we had a bad result against Sheffield, and we often do bounce back quite well after poor results and poor performances. So I feel like it's going to be a few goals for us. And I'm hoping another couple for Muniz and really just create the legend that is Rodrigo. I would love to see, at least a solid victory that doesn't keep us on the edge of our seat for the whole game. I think that's what I'm looking for more than anything. Guys, I think we can probably wrap it up there. It's been really good to sort of dissect what was some mixed feelings after this game against Sheffield. But I think we've done a good job of actually covering the game and helping ease the pain of those who haven't quite got over it yet. And good to talk about the Forest game as well coming up on Tuesday night. We'll be looking to podcast later in the week as well to actually cover the game, hopefully cover a brilliant win where we've predicted the result correctly. Well, I've predicted the result correctly, hopefully. But guys, thank you again so much. Thanks, Dave, for joining us. Really good to chat with you again, mate.
Yeah, you guys have got me all pumped up for an away win now. So that's really made my day, and I'm really excited to see myself get proved wrong and you guys to get proved right. So come on, you Whites.
Fingers crossed. Become that good luck charm that we really need you to.
Yeah.
Sammy, thanks for joining us tonight. Off to bed for you, mate.
Yeah, but before that, I'm just going to symbolically rub Dave's head, Wait, where are you? There you go. I'm just going to symbolically rub, and then, hopefully that applies some good... I moisturize. Hopefully that gets us over the line.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you all for who've joined on the live stream as well. Great to see so many people jumping in and commenting and engaging with us. Really appreciate it. Please do, as always, share the podcast with your friends. Share it around on social media. We really appreciate all the support. And as always, come on, you Whites.